who wrote the classic Planet Ponzi. And he's here with us again today. Mitch Firestein, how are you?
Thanks for having me, Max. Love to be here.
All righty.
In hot old New York.
So, Planet Ponzi. You know, that basically all these governments are bankrupt, and the only way they stay alive is by continuing to float more and more garbage bonds. I mean, that's the definition of a Ponzi scheme. So we warned the audience years ago, the thesis is correct. It is a massive Ponzi scheme. You can't taper a Ponzi scheme, just like what happened to Bernie Madoff. You know, when some people started demanding their money back, the whole Ponzi scheme collapsed, and that's what happens to Ponzi schemes. So how many more rate cuts do you expect to see into the end of the year from the Fed? They're back on the accommodation front, as are all central banks in the world. What are your insights, Mitch?
Well, Max, it's kind of ridiculous. You can never taper a Ponzi scheme, and this is the motherlode of Ponzi schemes. European Central Bank is making regurgitations that they're going to cut rates. You've got Christine Lagarde, who has no background basically in economics, now running that institution. And what they are doing is buying corporate bonds. The next thing they're going to do probably is throw in the suitcase, open the suitcase, and start buying equities.
Was the Swiss National Bank the first central bank to buy stocks? They bought a big position in Apple, et cetera, and that's now a thing.
They were one of the biggest holders of Apple at one point, and I know that Bank of Japan actually was the first, I believe, and they started actually cornering the ETF market. And look at the Federal Reserve. You get these guys who are appointed for 14-year terms, guaranteed millions of dollars over the duration, and everything paid for to get it chronically wrong. If you look at how many times they've been right with their forecast versus how many times they've been wrong, anyone in normal life in a business would have been fired long ago. But yet they get reappointed and they get their tenure. It's kind of ridiculous.
Before Trump became president, he was tweeting that the Fed needs to raise rates because this cheap money is destroying the banks. But now that he's president, he's jawboning and tweeting, you got to cut rates, you got to cut rates. What, did he have a brain transplant? What happened?
To keep the Ponzi scheme going. Ponzi schemes and bubbles end incredibly badly. And this is the biggest bubble in equities, fixed income products, bonds, credit, the credit markets, and property markets. Property markets in the UK, they're blaming Brexit and Putin. Properties collapsing in Vancouver, Toronto, San Francisco, New York City. All over the world, property prices are coming down because the correlation between incomes and property prices has become disconnected when the central bank started printing hundreds of trillions of dollars to prop up the markets after the crisis. So what caused the crisis? Let's review. Too much debt, too much credit, too much leverage. Right now, these levels of debt, credit, and leverage are higher. And in some cases, some of these derivative products are the size is 8 times greater than the crisis. So how do you think this can possibly end? What could possibly go wrong? A lot. But fiat currency, as I've been saying for several years on your program, and mainstream won't have any part of it, you know, the US dollar hegemony for the past 100 years has probably seen its peak. And people are looking, and the yellow metal and the silver metal, all the precious metals are coming back in vogue because, contrary to what you'll read or listen to in the fake news media and the fake financial press, those are, for 6,000 years, gold has been a currency. Gold will always be a currency. It's something that can't be debased. It's a finite commodity with infinite demand.
Well, by currency, you mean money.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So now, speaking of J.P. Morgan, they recently sent out a memo to their private clients, their wealth clients there. They said that the U.S. dollar, in fact, will soon lose its exorbitant privilege as world reserve currency, and they should instead allocate to gold and Swiss franc and other currencies. So they're kind of getting on this anti-U.S. dollar. So, though, when is this thing going to end? Because they already went through zero, which would seem as an impossibility.
We have, for the next couple of years, we've got about $5 trillion in triple B and junk bonds that need to be refinanced. So you will see these zombies not getting refinancing. Then you'll see defaults. Then you'll see, when the tide runs out, who's naked. Because the people who have exposure will default. There will be mass defaults. There could be municipal bond defaults as well.
So you're saying to look at in the corporate bond market will be the early signs of the default wave that'll kick in and spread. The contagion will go right across.
Liquidity will freeze up and it sees, which will cause a liquidity crisis, which will cause a credit crisis.